Hey friends. So I'm working through some questions, I suppose, is the way to think of it, um, that I've had come up over the last week or so because I've noticed that, as I would expect, I suppose, my time with Annalise or with my daughter reflects some of what's going on inside me. And that creates a sense of, I think, maybe just a heightened awareness, both around my engagement with her and around my own kind of interior perception of what's happening in me. And one of the ways this has manifested recently is that, and the interesting thing is, this also is, Katie has, my wife has essentially said she's having the same experience with Annalise, so it's not strictly confined to me. It's kind of a whole family thing. We're all kind of seeing the same thing. But the way it manifests is Annalise has just had a fair amount of resistance to doing what she's asked. I mean, simple things like sitting down at dinner time, going through the stages of the bedtime routine without completely torpedoing the process and taking us off into some like long, drawn out other thing. It manifests in the work we're doing on violin as just a pretty steadfast resistance to doing anything I ask her to do. She seems to be claiming her autonomy, claiming her autonomous ability to decide what she wants to do and declare what she wants to do and insist on that, even when it's not really viable. I mean, a 5-year-old can't just decide how long they want bedtime to take or how long they want the morning to take or whether or not to go to school. Those aren't questions that are really up to her. And in some ways, I class violin in that same category, in that this is not something that she is going to freely pick up and do every day of her life in a focused way without some guidance. So her resistance to my insistence on the process that we have, and part of the issue is that our process has just been really random for several weeks now, for several months, really, all summer. And we have yet to come back to a rhythm that really just makes it feel like it's part of our day. So I would say resistance is kind of the word. That's the word that I keep using. It's the word that it feels like when I talk about it. And so but what that does is, as I experience that in my relationship with her, as I experience her in that place, I have to kind of quickly look at, well, what's happening in me, right? Like, what is my role in this? What's the analog, if there is one, within me to this resistance that I'm seeing in her? And I know that on some level, I don't have to figure out how what I'm feeling is the same, or draw necessarily really direct connections between those things. But there is just very naturally, visibly, a sense that my own process, where I am in my own life, also involves a kind of resistance, a kind of fighting against something, fighting against being told what I need to do. Because that somehow seems to destroy my freedom. It seems to take away my autonomy. But that's not actually true. And one of the, so something that is just showing up for me now, I watched a video a week or two ago by a guy, can't even remember his name, but he was, I mentioned it on my post. He's a young philosopher who had just taken a trip to Athens and to this little village in Switzerland where Friedrich Nietzsche used to hang out and did a bunch of his writing. And he was talking, he's also reviewing a book by Patrick Deneen called Regime Change, conservative writer, and this guy was sort of offering a critique of the book. But one of the things he talked about in all that is that for the Greeks, for Plato, the definition of freedom was very different than the definition of freedom that we have today. For Plato, freedom is the discipline of practice, spiritual practice, philosophical practice, right? Contemplation, refining the mind, growing the mind's capacity for perception, for understanding. And really, he didn't, I don't think Plato would have used these words, but the expansion of consciousness, which happens through focused action. Sadhguru said something on a video that I saw several weeks ago, months ago now, I forget. He said, consciousness doesn't just grow on its own. It's something we have to strive for. It's something we have to work towards. There's a discipline involved. It doesn't just happen on its own. And freedom for the Greeks was that discipline. It was not the ability to do whatever we want. And the ability to do whatever we want is a very kind of contemporary American, Western in general, I think, but especially American form of individual, you might even say hyper-individualized freedom, where as long as we're not like directly hurting somebody else, we are free to do whatever we want, free to live however we want. The only boundaries around our freedom that we really want to entertain are, am I causing direct pain or suffering or somehow impinging on someone else's freedom through the actions that I'm taking right now? That's how we politically define freedom. And for the Greeks, that was woefully inadequate, because doing whatever we want in the absence of a discipline that is ultimately, again, maybe not in their words, but in contemporary language to express what they were saying, in a discipline that revolves around the expansion of consciousness, we're actually enslaved to our passions, to our feelings, to the whim of whatever we feel in this moment or the next moment or the next moment. And they saw that as a kind of untethering and a kind of individualizing of our experience that draws us further and further out of connection with a collective. It no longer it's no longer woven together with the collective understanding that we are all interdependent and that our own pursuit of the expansion of consciousness, our own individual growth, is inextricably entwined with relationships and responsibilities and causes and effects that are woven through a community. And so when I look at myself first, when I look at my own resistance to things that I sort of know I need to change about my life, but that have a tinge of somehow being associated with a voice of authority or some kind of not usually it's not a direct memory, but some sort of historical association with someone telling me what to do. Really, on the kind of like from the point of view of my highest self, I know these are things I need to do. But if there's an association there in my mind, I'll fight it and kind of rebel against it, as though you can't tell me what to do. This is my life. I have my. I don't want to. I don't want to. That's what I sound like to myself. And that's not healthy. I need to. There's a way in which I am recognizing in this my own need to hear that voice, but understand what part of me it's coming from. And when I'm working with my daughter, with Annalise, and I see that same spirit of rebellion, that spirit of you can't tell me what to do, you can't make me, hell no, I won't go, which she has so powerfully. There's a sense in which I want to be able to engage with that without dominating it. Because I think that what happened in my case was that spirit was sort of so, because that spirit is not on the right track, right? Like let's just understand that her desire to just do whatever she wants with 5-year-old level cognition, sort of like bringing up her preferences and wanting to be able to just do her preferences, that's not a path that is leading her in a good place. She doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with her. She's 5 years old, doing exactly with a powerful sense of self. She's asserting what she wants. But giving her what she wants is not the path we want to necessarily go down. Same thing for me, both at that age and even now. Just what I want is not necessarily the thing that I need, or that it's going to take me even where I want to go, my highest self. But I think that when that came up in my youth, I had various figures in my life that sort of that saw that and were like, "You're misguided," and like kind of like stopped it. There's a kind of invasive discipline that arrested that impulse, because it didn't know how to kind of gently work with that and channel that internal motivation to assert my own expression into a positive direction. So as I'm working with Annalise, that's what's top of mind, is like, how can I take my own felt sense understanding of this thing that she's going through, and this phase that it's relatively, again, the last couple of weeks Um, and it's just been it's gotten pretty powerful. It's gotten to where almost everything that she's asked to do somehow comes into play as a fight, or she tries to negotiate or whatever. So, my job as a parent, as I see it, is to, like, first, step one, do no harm, right? First, do no harm. Let's try not to get frustrated, not to respond angrily, or um, push back against it in a way that kind of violates her integrity. But then also not just roll over and capitulate to it, but find a way to manage it, to channel it, to let her own impulse of desiring an expression, because ultimately that's what we're talking about, right? It's not that she wants to do, she doesn't want to go off the rails. That's not her deepest soul desire. It's to just follow her preferences into, like, random things that are going to take her off the rails, and not come back to the things that are central to her life or that are expanding her. That's not what she wants. That's not what teenagers want either. That's just the first thing that reveals itself as a kind of sweet thing or an attractive thing to pursue, but ultimately that's not their highest aim. So how do we get them from that and put boundaries around them that are safe, that are firm, but that are also effective enough to truly take those impulses and move them in the direction of their own positive growth, and offer degrees of choice within that. Obviously, how do you want to spend your time? How do you want to contribute? But that notion of freedom as discipline is really helpful to me at a time like this, both for my own kind of, like, it's a good reminder for me in my own work, my own life, and, man, as a parent, it comes in handy to understand that the reason that it's frustrating is not because I'm some kind of crazy dominating parent and I just want to tell my child what to do and have that be the end of it. It's that I actually am sensing this is going kind of out of bounds here. I have to make my own tools more effective to keep this in bounds without aggression, without frustration, and without lashing out against it. That's the thing that I see. That, and again, because I have it in my own imprint, I have to kind of really be mindful of, really watch for it. Because the last thing in the world I want to do is sort of transmit more of that kind of friction that compresses and ultimately kind of sends that impulse underground, where it can't be seen and comes out later and does way more damage in the long run because it's not being dealt with and not being utilized in a productive and positive way. So, yeah, lots happening. But, man, the journey of being a parent is a beautiful one. Endlessly beautiful. Thanks for watching, folks. Appreciate you. Have a great day. I will see you soon.